What if I told you a footballer once stopped a war? Not with weapons, not with power, but with one message.
Aujourd'hui, on vous demande, s'il vous plaît, on se met à genoux. Déposez tous les armes. Faites les élections, organisez les élections. Et tout ira du mieux. On veut.
That moment came when Côte d'Ivoire was on the brink of war. And somehow, one voice helped bring a nation back from the edge. This is not just a football story. This is the story of a man who united a nation. Before the goals, before the trophies, before the world knew his name, Didier Drogba was just a child, trying to understand why he had to leave home. Born in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, his early life was not built on comfort. It was built on uncertainty. His family was struggling financially. Opportunities were limited. And like many families at the time, they had to make a difficult decision. At just 5 years old, Didier Drogba was sent away, not to chase football, not to become a star, but simply to survive. He was sent to France to live with his uncle, a man who was also a footballer. But this was not a dream move, it was a sacrifice. Imagine being 5 in a different country, different language, different culture. No parents, no familiar faces, just silence and distance. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. And slowly, that feeling began to grow. Loneliness. Football wasn't the focus. It wasn't even a clear dream yet. It was just an escape. Something to fill the emptiness. Years later, he returned to Ivory Coast. Back to his parents. Back to what felt like home. But stability still wasn't there. Life remained difficult. So again, he was sent back to France. This time older, but still searching. Still trying to find where he truly belonged. This back and forth life between continents, between identities, shaped him. It made him stronger, more resilient, more aware. He wasn't growing up like other players. No structured academy, no clear football path, no early recognition, just life lessons, hard ones. But in those quiet moments, on the streets, on small pitches, with nothing but a ball, something started to grow. Not fame, not ambition, but belief. A belief that maybe, just maybe, there was something more waiting for him. And without knowing it, that boy who felt lost, who felt far from home, was building something powerful inside him. Because one day, that same boy would carry the hopes of a nation. Before the world knew his name, before the big stadiums, before the finals, Didier Drogba was just trying to survive. His first real opportunity came at Le Mans FC. It wasn't glamorous. No spotlight, no headlines. Just hard work. And even then, it wasn't easy. Injuries slowed him down. Doubt followed him. At 21, he was still fighting just to be seen. But slowly, something began to change. By the 2002-2003 season, he finally had a full run of games. And for the first time, people started to notice the strength, the hunger, the presence. He wasn't polished, but he was powerful. That was enough for N. Avant Camp to take a chance on him. And this was the turning point. At Camp, Drogba exploded. Goals started coming, not just tappings, but powerful finishes, relentless pressing, physical dominance. A striker defenders hated to face. He scored 17 league goals in one season. For a club like Camp, that was massive. Now people were watching, not just in France, but across Europe. And then came the call. Olympique de Marseille. A bigger stage, more pressure, higher expectations. This was no longer a test. This was the proving ground. And Drogba didn't just rise. He took over. At Marseille, everything came together. His power became controlled. His movement became smarter. His finishing deadlier. He wasn't just scoring, he was dominating games. Then came Europe, the UEFA Cup. This was where he announced himself to the world. Night after night, against top European side, Drogba delivered. Big goals, big performances. He carried Marseille all the way to the final. Now the world was no longer asking, who is Drogba? They were asking, how do we stop him? Defenders couldn't handle him. Too strong, too fast, too determined. He played like a man with something to prove. Because he did. And then the biggest clubs in Europe came calling. Offers, attention, spotlight. After years of being overlooked, he was now the center of attention. But one club saw something more. Not just a striker, not just a goal scorer, but a leader, a big game player, a warrior. That club was Chelsea FC, and that move would change everything. When Drogba arrived at Chelsea FC in 2004, he wasn't joining a finished team. He was joining a club with ambition, but a missing piece. Chelsea wanted more than domestic success. They wanted Europe. They wanted the UEFA Champions League. And they were desperate. Year after year, they came close. 2005, heartbreak. 2007, near miss. 2008, final and pain. That night in Moscow, Chelsea were seconds away from glory. Then it slipped. Missed penalties, tears, silence. And Drogba sent off in that final, walking down the tunnel while his teammates fought without him. That moment stayed with him. It wasn't just defeat, it was regret. People questioned him. Too emotional, too aggressive, not disciplined enough. But what they didn't understand was this. Drogba was built for the biggest moment on the pitch. He was unstoppable, not just a striker, a force. He bullied defenders, he dominated the air. He scored in finals, FA Cup finals, League Cup finals. When it mattered most, Drogba delivered. Again and again and again. But one trophy still haunted him. The one Chelsea wanted more than anything. The Champions League. And time was running out. This wasn't supposed to be Chelsea's year. They were struggling. Inconsistent in the league. Changing managers mid-season. Written off by everyone. This team was not the strongest, not the fastest, not the favorite. But they had something else. Experience, belief. And a man who had waited too long, Didier Drogba. The road to the final was war. They faced giants and survived. Then came the final, Munich. Against Bayern Munich, in Bayern's own stadium. Everything was against Chelsea. The crowd, the pressure, the moment. For 80 minutes, Chelsea suffered. Wave after wave of attack. Then Bayern scored. The stadium exploded. It was over. Or at least it felt like it. But Drogba wasn't finished. 88 minutes, corner kick. One last chance. The ball is delivered, and rising above everyone was Drogba. Header, goal, silence, then chaos. Chelsea were alive. Extra time, more pressure, more suffering. Then Drogba gives away a penalty. The villain. Maybe. But fate was not done with him. Penalty shootout. The entire season comes down to this. One by one, players step up. And then it is done. Drogba, the man who was sent off in 2008. The man who carried the pain for years. Now he had the final say. He walks forward, calm, focused. History waiting. He strikes. Goal. Chelsea are champions of Europe. At last, after years of heartbreak, after years of chasing, they finally did it. And at the center of it all was Drogba. Not just scoring, not just playing, but delivering when everything was on the line. Before he spoke to a nation, before he asked for peace, he had already become something bigger than a footballer. He had become a symbol. On the pitch, Didier Drogba carried the hopes of Ivory Coast. He wasn't just a player, he was their leader, their captain, their voice in moments of pressure. With the national team, Ivory Coast national football team, he gave everything. Goals, passion, leadership. He led them to their first ever World Cup qualification in 2006. A historic moment. A moment that united millions. Individually, he rose to the top of African football. Winning the African Footballer of the Year twice. Proving he wasn't just great in Europe, but the best on the continent. But there was one team missing. The African Cup of Nations. Despite reaching the finals, the trophy always slipped away. Close, but never complete. Still, to his people, Didier Drogba was already a hero. Not just because of trophies, but because of what he represented. Hope. But back home, Ivory Coast was breaking. A civil war had divided the country, north against south. Families torn apart, communities destroyed, fear everywhere. And in the middle of all this chaos, football continued. Because sometimes, football is the only thing people have left. In 2005, Ivory Coast qualified for the World Cup. For the first time in history, celebration, joy, relief. But Drogba knew something. This moment was bigger than football. Inside the dressing room, surrounded by his teammates, he picked up a microphone. No script, no preparation, just emotion. He looked into the camera, not as a striker, not as a star, but as a son of Ivory Coast.
Ivoiriens, Ivoiriennes, du nord et du sud, du centre à l'ouest.
You can hear it in his voice. This wasn't performance. This was real.
Vous avez vu, on vous a prouvé aujourd'hui que toute la Côte d'Ivoire peut cohabiter, peut jouer ensemble pour un même objectif, se qualifier pour le mondial.
And then, the moment that would echo through history.
S'il vous plaît, déposez tous les armes. faites les élections, organisez les élections et tout ira du mieux. On veut ça.
That message reached the entire nation. Rebels, soldiers, families. Everyone listened. And slowly, something incredible happened. The fighting began to stop. A ceasefire was declared. Not because of politics, not because of force, but because one man used his voice. Didier Drogba didn't just unite a team, he united a country. And in that moment, football became more than a game. It became hope. It became peace. For many players, football is where the story ends. But for Didier Drogba, it was only the beginning. Because what made Drogba special was not just what he did on the pitch. It was what he chose to do after the final whistle. At the height of his success, when the world was celebrating his goals, he was thinking about home, about the people he left behind, about a country still healing. So he gave back. Not for headlines, not for attention, but because he understood what it meant to struggle. Through his foundation, he helped build hospitals, improved healthcare, supported communities, gave people a second chance at life. This was not the work of a celebrity. This was the heart of a man who never forgot where he came from. Because for Drogba, success was never just about trophies. It was about impact. He had already united a nation during war. Now, he was helping rebuild it in peace. And that is why Didier Drogba is remembered as more than a footballer. Not just a legend of the game, but a symbol of hope, a symbol of leadership, a symbol of what football can truly be. Some careers are measured in goals, but true greatness is measured in lives changed. Some players are remembered for trophies, some for goals, but a few are remembered for changing lives. Didier Drogba was more than a footballer. He was a leader, a voice, a symbol of unity, and proof that sometimes the most powerful thing in football is not what happens on the pitch. If this story inspired you, like the video, subscribe, and be part of the journey.